Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hit and Hustle from IrishSportsDaily.com. I'm your host, Greg Flammang, and with me, as always, is Jamie Uyeyama, Mr. Jamie University. It is Tuesday, May 20th, and there was a report yesterday out from Pat Forty of SI.com talking about the perhaps imminent end of the Notre Dame USC rivalry, the cross country series. That is, many people are calling it the greatest intersectional rivalry in all of college football. But that could end. So we're going to talk about that, what that could mean for Notre Dame in terms of future schedules, what it means for USC in terms of them just completely shredding their identity and everything they ever stood for. So we can talk about that, and we can. And then I want to get into Marcus Freeman, kind of a year 3 check-in, or I guess going into year 4, about where he's at, where we think the program is at. What we're surprised by, what he's good at, what we think he needs to improve on, and where the program needs to go, and just kind of talk about, his journey as Notre Dame's coach 3 years in. So that's going to be the show today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. If you like what you hear, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell so whenever it is we are going live. Links to the podcast are in the description below. And as always, the show is brought to you by ESQ Clothing, founded by Notre Dame alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best custom clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best in 2025, from a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt or bomber jacket, or the perfect tuxedo for wedding season. Check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com. Book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. Isaac K says the national media coverage of USC ending the series is annoying. The situation is seemingly never portrayed as USC wanting to end it. I don't think.
Where has that happened? I haven't seen any of that.
I think it's pretty transparently. Yeah, and Pat Forty was very clear about this is USC.
Pretty obvious, yeah.
Yeah, this is USC and what they're doing, and I think Pat Forty had a nice line in his piece today that I encourage everyone to go read. That basically, like, look, USC ought to just stop playing games at the Coliseum, move down, build another stadium somewhere else, and get rid of Tommy Trojan and all those other things, because, like, truly, I said at the beginning, like, they have literally dismantled everything they've ever been about. And as someone who's lived in Southern California my entire life, it's kind of shocking. And to me, it's shocking in that there are a number of USC fans, posters, accounts on Twitter, which however much weight you give that, I don't give it many. But, like, the fact is like, there's not an outcry over this. And just in terms of, it's not just the Notre Dame series, it's the Pac-12. It's getting rid of that. The whole mindset of just being kind of afraid of it, like making excuses about the travel and all these other things. It's just not what USC has been forever. The Lincoln Riley situation, I mean, he's a driver of this, and it's kind of unbecoming, in my opinion. But Jamie, kind of what are your thoughts here on just what USC is doing and just how we got to this point, and how disappointing is it for you? Should it happen, if you're disappointed at all?
I'm super disappointed because it just doesn't need to go away, right? Like, there's just really no need. It's just essentially USC just saying, like, we're not good enough to win on the road every 2 years at Notre Dame, pretty much. Because they're going to have an extra road trip every 2 years. Like, there is nothing, like, the schedule, it's always been played for, basically since, Kennedy administration, where it's been the same setup, right? Where it's October in South Bend, end of the season, November in LA, every second year, right? Like, that's how they've done it. So them saying, like, oh, they want to open the season, it's like, well, the reason why they didn't do that is for many years because that is way more of an advantage for USC, where they're getting it's Notre Dame's traveling when it's hot.
Yeah.
In Southern California, and it'll be hot in South Bend, but it's not the same kind of heat. So it's like that's the one reason why, and also too they're them doing it so it's like even playing ground by having it October, November. So it's already kind of baked in. I guess like if they get the scheduling agreement with the SEC, the Big Ten, and the SEC, you're going to add in another SEC team into it. Yeah. So yeah, it's going to be a tough schedule for USC, but you already have at that point. It's going to be 4 automatic qualifiers. You can't be the 4th best team in the Big Ten, like because every second year you got to travel, make one extra road trip. Mm-hmm. Like that's disgusting. It's so stupid. Like it makes no sense. And it'd be one thing too if you just said like if there was a thing where USC was Nebraska and we're like, hey, the days of yesteryear, it's over, right? Like Nebraska, I don't think Nebraska will ever come close to getting back to where they were, right? Because it was a totally different time. It really doesn't matter who the coach is. They really just don't have enough to kind of pull in and completely change how they've been over the last, 15, 20 years at Nebraska. Because especially how the modern game has changed. It's like, they're not going back to, the flex bone option that they ran back in the day. Yeah. They just can't do that anymore. And it's just it's a different game. It's a different time. And you need a certain amount of athletes, and Nebraska will never get that. USC is the number 1 ranked recruiting class in the country. Like, they can recruit like that every year. They can have a top 5 class every year. They actually should have a top 5 recruiting class every year based on location, tradition, resources, all of this kind of stuff. There's no reason why they shouldn't be at or 5 top 10, 100%. 100%. There's like zero excuses for that. It's just that they've had literally just hired bad coaches and haven't had the right coaches. So, they've lost 11 of the last 14 games against Notre Dame. But it's like if they had Pete Carroll and they were winning all these games, there's no way they'd be backing out. Because they would have won every one of those games that they lost, those close games on the road. They would have done it because the program would have been a much healthier spot than it was now. And to get rid of it is it's so short-sighted to look at it from that perspective to say like, hey, we want to get in a better position to win national championships. So it's like, I guess would replace that with like an easier game to get another win. Okay. But you already don't have, first of all, you shouldn't be afraid of losing that game. They shouldn't. Traditionally, like you can win those. You can dominate the series if you got it going as as they've had at certain points, or it can be obviously at the peak, when both teams are going good. There's no reason that both teams can't be at a really, really high level. And I just don't see why, to be afraid of losing the game. If that's the motivation, it's just dumb to me. I also think it's one of these moves that's so bad for their own like fans, because it's like they have 2 games traditionally that the fans care about, Notre Dame and UCLA. So you're going to get rid of one of them. Are people all of a sudden going to care every few years when you're playing like one of the Big Ten powers, like Ohio State or whatever? Yeah, I'm sure people care about that game, but it's just like one of those games that like you could win, and all of a sudden, a kind of okay season turns into a good season.
Yeah,
when you do it, like it just boggles my mind why they would ever want to get rid of that type of game. And and I mentioned this in our Discord when we were just talking about how ridiculous it is. But why don't, like, Bill Plaschke is, he's a very prominent writer, LA Times.
Yeah.
Like, this is exactly what guys like Bill Plaschke are around. Write the article, Plaschke. Talk to Ronnie Lott, Marcus Allen, name your, Reggie Bush, whatever. Name your famous alums there, and publicly shame the AD, Lincoln Riley, and all this. Like Matt Leinart and Bush and those guys, like, just like, I mean, do you really want like Brady Quinn being like, you guys were scared to do this on the Fox pregame show? It's like, that's it's not going to get them back to glory. That's not the thing that's going to get them back to glory. Just be better, recruit better, develop better, coach better, do well enough that this recruiting class you're bringing in, that most of these guys stay for the 4 years or 3 to 4 years. But if you don't do that, like, who cares? Like, it's not going to matter if you're playing Notre Dame or not. You're still going to be just like mid. And that's what's really sad about it.
Yeah. Brennan McAleenan of 1 Foot Down, he made the same point to me today. It's like, where are the former players speaking out about this? And maybe they will, because now I think it's been whispered, it's one of those things. I don't want to say whispered. It's been bandied about, right? People have been talking about how, this could be happening, right? And we mentioned a couple of times, like when Riley and the president of the university are talking about it, there's something there. It's not just Twitter accounts. It's not just bloggers and people writing stories because it's the off season kind of thing. Like when the head of your program is doing it, when the head of the university is doing it, there's something there. And, Gordon Butler, thank you for the super chat. He says USC ducking the Notre Dame game is an admission that they can't win consistently in the big and are settling for trying to sneak into the playoffs each year. I think for me is, having lived out here, and I'll tell you why the Pete Carroll years were so annoying, is because they were the thing that you wanted Notre Dame to be. You say what you want about Pete Carroll. The guy wanted all the smoke. He was not afraid. They would go to Auburn. They would schedule with with Ohio State, right? Like, they were not afraid of teams. They would go to Virginia Tech when they were a pretty good team, in the mid 2000s there. They would come with it, right? They would go toe to toe with Michigan. It just, they had that attitude, and they had like the spirit of the university and what it was. It was annoying because it was aspirational and it was your main rival. And I live out here, and so that's what it was built on, right? Like the Pete Carroll stuff. Like, this is just weakness. That's all it is. Like, and the funny thing is Lincoln Riley, like, that is kind of his thing, right? He left Oklahoma because he didn't want the SEC smoke. He didn't want it. And then he goes to USC and they move to the Big Ten, which is like, why are you doing that? Like, that is, again, like, you're burning your identity. Like, you are the Pac-12. You are the Pac-10. Now you go, you sell out to the Big Ten to be just an also ran in that conference. And now you want to duck Notre Dame because we had to go to Rutgers, like, because we had to schedule, a game in Piscataway, and we had, I don't like going to Maryland. It's like, excuse me, like, who are you? What are you trying to be? And and when you lose your identity, like, that's the thing that really hurts. And this is the thing, people will bang on Notre Dame for this independent stuff. You got to have a code. And USC right now is a program that doesn't have a code. They don't live by anything. They don't hold anything sacred. Like, they will just do whatever it is they feel like gives them the best chance. And oh, by the way, when you have that mindset, it usually doesn't work out for you. You need to have a totally different mindset. And this is why, and we'll get to this on Marcus Freeman as well. Like, he is a guy, never makes excuses, never points to anything else other than his team and the way his team is prepared and playing their best. He never blames refs. He never does any of that stuff, right? He doesn't complain about travel. He doesn't complain about road games. Like, his team had 2 less days to get ready for the Orange Bowl against Penn State with an injured team. Never mentioned it. Never mentioned, oh, I wish we had this or that and the other thing. Didn't even let it enter the conversation of being an excuse. And that's the kind of coach that he is. And that's the kind of program that Notre Dame is right now. And the fact that USC is crying about, the travel, and it makes it difficult, and hem and haw, Lincoln Riley, we got to look at what's best for us. We got to look at what's best. USC coming out with the statement yesterday about, we care about the rivalry. That's why we offered an extension in the series. You want the last game to be at the Coliseum. They offered a 1-year extension, Jamie.
Yeah.
Let's be serious for 10 seconds. Okay. That is so transparently ridiculous. And the way that you get out of this without, trying to look, hey, we were trying. It's like, why don't we just move the game to the beginning of the season? I'm sorry. It is what it is. And it is what it has been for 50 years. And it is this way for 100 years. That to me is the disappointing part. Is that they are just completely selling out everything they've ever stood for. And it's kind of gross. It's just gross. Like, it truly is. And like, there's so much about college football that is changing like this. And it is what it is, right? I don't want to, old man yelling at clouds thing, right? Like, things change and that's fine. It is what it is, the way of the world. I just think this is so transparently gross to me. Like, why are you just, I don't respect it. I don't respect. And so, there was a time I respected USC. I did not like them, but I respected them. There is nothing to respect about this, like 0%. And that's the disappointing part for me.
The one thing too that I'm sure, because there's probably some rando USC fan that will say, oh, look, this is just what's happening in college football. Or I saw already a couple of people say, well, that's just how these rivalries are going away because of conference realignment. It's like, well, the reason why those, like, say, Texas A&M and Texas took a break was because A&M left the Big 12 and there was like real beef with the conferences between like Big 12 and SEC when that happened. And that's why that, rivalry got put on hiatus. Right. And if you look at, like, say, the Civil War with Oregon and Oregon State, like, they still played it. Like, they still played it. Like, still play the Apple Cup. Yet do they kind of need to fix some things too to get it, like, at the end of the season? I do think they need to like change that, get that fixed, whatever, so it's at the right time. And there was stuff with, like, obviously Utah and BYU didn't play every year because of, their thing. But this wasn't anything like they joined the Big Ten, but the only thing that changed was them having the road trips. That's literally it. And then also too, it's like, well, there's some also, you're not going to play bad Arizona teams, in the Pac-12 South or whatever. But but if you look at the 2027 schedule, they are basically playing the Big Ten West. And if you can't beat the friggin' Big Ten West, get out. Just get out. Just quit. Literally just like fold the program if you can't handle playing the Big Ten West like it's a joke. It's pathetic. And I don't know. I don't even know. Like, I'm sure we'll talk about this again whenever it gets finally, it gets done. But you know what? I will. I'm not going to applaud USC for if it, they reverse course, they get shamed into reversing course. But I'll be happy if that's the case, because it's just going to be a bad look for them. And I just don't really. There is no other way around it.
Yeah, my first game, 1992 Coliseum. 11-year-old Greg watching Reggie Brooks run for 227, 3 touchdowns with the stomach bug. Jerome Bettis also scored a touchdown. Obviously, it was a great day. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that they've chosen this route. Again, it's one of those things you just don't respect it, and you don't respect what they've become. And I'll tell you, like, I have friends. Obviously, I have friends who are USC fans. Makamuto, someone I do the podcast with. They're threatening our podcast, Jamie, the Untitled Notre Dame USC Football podcast. Like, they are threatening me and my friend doing our show, the first ever podcast like I've ever done, and I keep it going because it's fun with me and my friend. And he's like, I literally despise Lincoln Riley for this. Like it. And I do think he's the driver of it. Like, I do. I honestly do. I think, like, Notre Dame, like, if Lincoln Riley was like, no, I don't want this to end at all. Like, I refuse. Like, we should just keep it going. It wouldn't be a topic. He obviously is fine with it. He probably is pushing for it, right? Because he wants it to be easier. He wants it to be easier. He wanted it to be easier at Oklahoma, and now he wants it to be easier at USC, and he's afraid of flying. I mean, if Notre Dame was like, like in 2018, Notre Dame went to they decided to go to San Diego to play Navy, and then they went to New York to play Syracuse, and then they had to fly back to LA to play USC, and they were dead, and they couldn't, their team was exhausted, and they almost lost to a terrible USC team when Notre Dame was undefeated and trying to go to the playoffs. Like, if Notre Dame was like, hey, we want to do all those things, and so therefore, like, we can't do the USC series now, and we're going to schedule, I don't know, whoever at Notre Dame Stadium and make it an easier situation for them flight-wise, people would kill Notre Dame for doing that. Notre Dame would never do that because that's not their identity. That's not what they do. So, it is what it is, Jamie. It's unfortunate. We'll monitor the situation, and we'll keep everyone tuned in to what's going on with that. You want to get tuned in to a better media company, Jamie. You want to get tuned in on that. You want to be on the up and up with your social media page, with your small business, and you can do that with VSR Media, founded by Notre Dame football pregame host and Emmy award-winning anchor Vahid Sadrazadeh. VSR Media provides professional and cinematic video and photo. Whether you're looking for a collegiate or pro-level highlight reel, have a personal story to tell, or are aiming to diversify and grow your business, VSR Media specializes in short and long-form video storytelling, social media management, and website design. VSR Media also captures professional headshot, senior, and sports photos. Contact them at vsrmediacompany.com. Mention Irish Sports Daily to receive 20% off your first project. Visit them online or give them a call at 574-800-9106. Let's talk about Marcus Freeman. After his going into year 4, 3 years into his tenure, he's 33-10. He has, I think, without question, the best couple of wins at Notre Dame since, we got to go back to the early 90s, right? I mean, I think beating Georgia in the Sugar Bowl and beating Penn State in the Orange Bowl. I mean, obviously they haven't won a bowl game of that caliber since the 1994 Orange Bowl, which was, the 1993 season. He has some of the worst losses in that same time span. I think losing to Marshall, losing to that Stanford team in 2022, losing to
Northern Illinois
last year. I mean, these are some of the worst losses Notre Dame's had. You know, I mean, you can talk about Tulsa. That wasn't a very good football team. Some really, really bad losses. It's coupled with some huge, huge wins. He's able to beat an undefeated Dabo in 2022 without the best team. He beats Kirby Smart, beats James Franklin. What are you most surprised by after, seeing him coach for 3 years? What are you most surprised by that? Wow, I did not. Maybe it's not that you didn't think he'd be good at this, but what are you most surprised by? What's hard to be good at for a first-time head coach, no matter who it is? What is hard to be good at? What is the thing that he's good at that you're kind of surprised that he was able to reach that level?
Well, one, I think the in-game stuff, it just took another level really this year. And I think, and it kind of started, the previous season too, right? Cause obviously he put a lot of emphasis on middle eight stuff and what they were doing there, but you can really see how they've, been a lot more strategic about things. And obviously, they hired Anthony Triche to be their analytics, director of analytics and all that. And that's been a big piece of it. But I just think he has been the aggression that he's shown is it's not surprising that he's aggressive, but there was a lot of stuff that early on where it was Jim Tressel, his mentor, and I think some of that, the comparisons in a bad way, just in terms of how conservative Tressel was as a coach, because that really doesn't win you games anymore, right? It's playing not to lose, right? And
I also think it's hard to replicate another person like that. That always makes me kind of nervous when, yeah.
And I always think about this too, because when Freeman was hired as defensive coordinator at Notre Dame, and then he did after the spring ball, he did a interview, on a podcast, and where he talked about, it's basically 4th and 10, game on the line. You got to get a stop here. What's the call? What are you doing here? And he said, I'm bringing pressure. Right. Cause that's who I am. That's who, that's who I am, because that's what we're going to do, because I'm not scared of it. It's hey, I'm saying our guys are better than your guys, and we're going to beat you. We're either going to beat you in a pass rush, we're going to beat you in coverage, whatever. And I think that is who Marcus Freeman is. That's who he was as a player. That's who he is as a coach. And I think it took him time to become that and learn to say hey, I got to be me, and I got to do this. Right. So, and I think that's kind of been, I don't even know if surprising is the right word, but refreshing is that he's done that and embraced that, because that is, I think, how they found success. And that was kind of built, they have all these, they got good kids, they got good culture, they got all this kind of stuff too. But when you have that kind of mentality, when he came out at the beginning of the Texas A&M game in the tunnel, and he was I think that was something that was needed. The thing that, obviously we get access to it because of these things that they show on the icon and all that kind of stuff that they show. But his speech at halftime at the Penn State game was the absolute right thing to say. And it also fits his team, which is in the mold of the kind of coach he is. So I think that has been the big thing. And the thing that, even though he was embracing who he is as a coach, but he's also evolving and changing and being what can we do to get better? As you said, to elevate, right? As you always talk about, elevate, because that's the thing, right? That's the thing. It's how someone won before and how someone done this. That's why you see too, like Nick Saban. The reason why Nick Saban was able to win for so many years is his teams like were built differently as they went on. They were this like ground and pound team that became this, and then they're like, well, we got to put more points. We got to recruit better receivers. We got to do this. We got to air it out. We got to run RPO. We got to do all this kind of stuff. And you see who he hired as his coordinators and how that changed and all that. So, and I think that's the thing with Freeman is that he has been pushing himself and the program to get better because he's, as Jay Smith said, flexible. Like he's flexible and willing to change and embrace these things in order to get better. And I think that's why too, when I look at like his kind of third year and why I don't think it's an aberration. Like, I think that it's more of the start of where they're going to be rather than like, oh, this is great, rather than like the BK. We had that really, we had the 2012 and then they kind of had the steps back in the next, and then the 2015 and like, I don't see it like that because, maybe they don't go back to the national championship game this year. Who knows, right? We'll see what happens. You have to see how it plays out. But I think they're just built to last to be a contender because of him constantly evolving as a coach.
Yeah, we've seen it a bunch, right? Where Notre Dame kind of takes not just a step back in record, but a step back in quality, after getting to, I don't want to say a pinnacle, but like a high point, right? Like Brian Kelly was not really able to put year over year of success like that. And obviously, I think we always compare Brian Kelly because there's really no one else to compare because the years like prior to BK and, Marcus Freeman has advanced the program beyond the Brian Kelly years, which was like kind of the goal. And it was a tough goal, right? Because he played for a national title and he was in the playoffs and things of that nature. But Marcus Freeman has advanced the program because of what he did last year. Like Brian Kelly, he really, Notre Dame was like kind of not a serious program for about 2 decades, and so he really advanced the ball and made them kind of like a nationally relevant team. They couldn't get to that point, but like they were right up on the edge. And last year, Marcus Freeman was able to tip them over the edge. I think the thing that, I think Jason put it right. Like he remains flexible. He's very self-aware, and he's not afraid to kind of say like, there are shortcomings here. And like the fact that they moved on from Jared Parker, I know he took the Troy job, but Notre Dame was they were ready to make a move at OC. And, look, the product was what it was, and they played the way they played against Louisville that year and Clemson. The metrics are very good. Another coach could point at those metrics and say like, hey, we should stay the course here. He wasn't going to do that. He was never going to do that. He wanted to make a change, and he did. And it was to their benefit in getting Mike Denbrock. I think the other part too, and I had several conversations with people about this, Tyler Wojak of Locked On Irish being one of them. The thing for me that was like a really, really great sign was not the losses to Marshall and Stanford. Like, obviously those were bad, but like to me, it showed so much that he didn't lose the team and they were able to bounce back from those losses and still be a good football team. Because we've seen so many times where you have your team is kind of looking good. You have a bad loss and things just like the rails completely fall off. It's not just at Notre Dame, but you see it all over college football where it's like, oh, they look like a pretty good team, lose a bad game, and it all falls apart, right? He had an opportunity to have that happen in 2022 after they lost to Stanford. Then they go on and beat Syracuse on the road. Then they go on and beat Clemson at home as an undefeated team, right? And that team goes and wins a bowl game, right? Same thing kind of happened in 2023. After the loss to Clemson, the team could have just kind of fallen apart. They didn't do that. Then they win the bowl game against South Carolina with Tyler Buckner at quarterback, who hadn't been the quarterback. Drew Pine leaves the program, and he had been the quarterback going 8-2. And Tyler Buckner comes in. They score 30, not even 35 points. They scored, what was it? 45-38. They scored 45 points with Tyler Buckner at quarterback. I mean, that shows me something, right? That he was able to do that. And I think it's an unknown. There's no way Jack Swarbrick knows he's going to be good at that, right? And it's just those are the things that kind of have impressed me the most, is that he's good at things that there's no way Jack Swarbrick could have known. Jack Swarbrick doesn't know that he is going to be able to bounce back from adversity like that. Like, how could he know that? You know, how can Jack Swarbrick know that he is going to maintain a message 3 years later and he's able to push the right buttons after losing to Northern Illinois and they go on the run that they did? It's unknowable. And to me, it's like that shows a lot about Marcus Freeman and just his belief in himself and the message that he's pushing, because it's not guaranteed. Like, these things aren't guaranteed, right? Just because you're at Notre Dame and you're a young coach, he's known to be a DC, you don't know that he's going to be able to push some measures like that, you know? So I was very impressed with that. Where do you think he needs to go for, little chinks in the armor where you feel like, you know, he needs to get better here, or like, this is kind of a red flag to me? Is there anything like that, right? Is there anything that exists there? Is there anything that you feel like, all right, this part needs to elevate?
Well, I think it is unfair to kind of say like, you know, you're always going to be wary of that Northern Illinois type game or the Marshall type game. But, I mean, it happened last year. So that's just something that people are going to think about, you know, in those games. I think because they did it last year, I think the odds of that happening again are probably pretty small. I think I don't see them ever, him not harping on his guys to make sure that all of these games are kind of like taken seriously, and especially the way they handled it after that. Like, I think, so I doubt it's going to happen again, but I think that is something that, you know, should always be on the minds of people, because until it kind of like, you know, you get a few years of them just like killing those kind of teams. Like, because I mean, let's face it, Brian Kelly should have lost some of those games too, but he ended up winning them. But you can still just go and like say, keeping it at that level of like, can you maintain this level of like, hey, dominance is like, we're better than these guys, and we're gonna smoke them. Like, we're so much better than them. We're more physical than them. We're this, we're that. We got more talent than them. And then, so the game's not gonna be close. Like, we're gonna pull away. We're gonna pull away in each one of these games. And that was the thing, right? Is like, so it's like, can you maintain that level? Right? Can you maintain that level? And that to me is like probably the most unknown about anything, because it's one thing to say like, you know, they did it last year and they, you know, like the build up and handled adversity all as well. But it's like, okay, well, there's new guys that are stepped in as like the leaders, even though a lot of guys are returning, but there's new guys who are leaders. Are you kind of keeping that within the program that everybody knows, like, hey, this is our standard, this is what we got to do? So it's that kind of on the field, I think, and still like, you know, you reach this point too where you're going to be a higher ranked team going in. There's going to be high expectations, and then it's going to be, well, can you do that? And all this kind of focus is on you, but you're not talking like Mike Elko after they, you know, won the LSU game, or you know, Deion Sanders after they won one game. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think he's done a great job of that, you know, of like, you know, last year was easy to be humble and then for them to kind of build it. But guess what? If they start this year 2-0 against probably the definitely the two most talented teams that they're going to play, well, there's going to be a lot of hype about Notre Dame, and everyone's going to say again, well, Notre Dame's in the CFP, like whatever, right? Well, can you just kind of keep building on that? And can you keep doing that and play to that standard? And I think that's that to me, and that on the field and then off the field, it's like recruiting. And we talked about how this could be the best class that they signed under him, maybe best class since they signed since 2013. Can you do it every year? Can you get that even better and take that where, just like what we were talking about with Mike yesterday on Power Hour, is the Rodney Dunhams, do they become like less of an exception and more of like the norm?
This is going to happen. Yeah.
This is going to happen. It's like, well, they're going to get 3 or 4 of those guys in each class, right? Like, or maybe even more, right? Like, can you do that? And I think that's kind of where you're looking for it in terms of recruiting.
That's the one piece where I'm surprised that hasn't gone better, just like they're not getting more of those top end guys in recruiting and things of that nature. Like, I think, they've always been good enough to get that 10 to 15, right? Because you're getting all those, like they're all the players kind of fit into that kind of category of like maybe 100 to like 400 kind of in the rankings or whatever. But you're not getting enough of those 100 to like 50 or 100 to 25 or even the top 25 type caliber guys. Like, they're just not getting enough of them. I'm surprised that hasn't happened, but we'll see if it does. You make a good point about, can they be a front runner? Because historically, Notre Dame has not been a good front runner, where the expectations are like really high. Like you said, if they start 2-0, they're going to be like one of the heavy front runners. And like, are you able to perform under those circumstances? Like, if you go back in time, if you look at all the best Notre Dame teams, they didn't have the biggest expectations, like in 15, they were coming off 2014, which was 7-5, they collapsed at the end of the year. 2017, like the 2016 team wasn't very good. 2018 was a little bit more. I mean, you're ranked like, I think 10th or 11th, right? Going into the start of the year, where it's like, you're kind of a good front runner at that point, but I mean, not really, especially, I mean, they handled it okay, I guess, in 2018, but 2020, it was kind of like an underdog thing. They didn't really know. I mean, they were ranked high, but it was like COVID, and that was a weird situation. This last year, like, I mean, they were ranked highly, but they weren't. I mean, I don't think people really thought that they were like one of the favorites. They didn't handle front running very well after the A&M game. They go and lose to Northern Illinois, right? And so I think this year, like, there's going to be some really high expectations of like, you're one of the best teams. You start 2-0. Teams are gunning for you. I mean, you're one of the big dogs, and they have to be able to handle that. I mean, you go back to like the 93 team that people didn't think as highly of them, right? And some of like the 90, 91, 92 teams, like in some ways they did kind of underachieve. So, that's something that he has to be good at, and we'll find out if he is. I mean, we talked about the recruiting just a second ago. Are you surprised he's not better at that? I mentioned he was, but are you surprised that it kind of hasn't gotten to that point? I mean, they haven't had great success, but that was kind of his MO. Is like he's gonna really elevate recruiting to another level.
I mean, I am, I guess, a little bit in terms of them not like signing a little bit better classes. The last 2 in terms of rankings or whatever, I guess. But I think some of that is he's not involved in the same way that he was as a coordinator, and he can't be. Like, yes, he's involved still, but he can't be the guy who's doing all of this like all the time, where he's having these relationships with these guys. So a lot of it, frankly, is, part of like on Chad. right?
You know what?
And
Actually, I don't want to cut you off, but I just thought of something about something I'm surprised by. I'm surprised that he was disciplined enough that I think Chad was like, I want to do anything I can. Like, I don't care who it is. Like, I want the pop and the sizzle and all those things. And Marcus Freeman, to me, has been very disciplined in I'm going after the right people, like the people that I think can fit in with this program and play the way that I want them to play. That's another one where it's like, I want X type of guy, you know, and I'm surprised he's just not fully on board with like, pay everyone whatever it takes. I want top classes like the A&M type of, you know, type of recruiting, Auburn type of recruiting. They never get to that point, but I'm surprised that wasn't his mindset. That's the thing.
That Marcus Freeman's, that wasn't his mindset. That it wasn't Marcus Freeman's mindset. You mean like that he wasn't like,
yeah. That he
I mean,
like,
I don't think it was an option. They weren't doing that. Like, you know, when,
yeah, that's true.
So it wasn't something that's the other thing, right? Where you can't really take it in the same. So if you look at, say, the first recruiting class where he was the coordinator going into a head coach, you know, that first class that was, you know, obviously like a strong class, right?
Yeah.
A very strong class. And on the defensive side of the ball specifically, and the guys that they wanted, like his kind of top guys, they landed like, feels like most of them, right?
Yeah,
so
it was like Junior, Burnham,
Sneed,
yeah.
You know, I mean, he didn't turn out, but Tyson Ford was a very high, you know, that kind of thing, right? There was a lot of that. And, you know, Ben Morrison was like a big battle to win that over Washington. Like there were things there that were, they just won those battles. But I think, you know, once he kind of took over as head coach, things were starting to change in terms of like, portal stuff was obviously like really increasing at that time, where that was becoming a bigger thing. Also, it was becoming a bigger thing with NIL just like exploded.
Yeah,
it exploded. So if you think about like his first year as head coach, where Kyle Hamilton, you know, was, you know, on the wait. No, he wasn't. No, the first year's defense coordinator, where Kyle Hamilton was on the team, right? And he was getting the NIL. Remember, he had his thing with, you know, what's his face? Colin Cowherd, right? He had that thing with Colin Cowherd, whatever, right?
Podcast,
yeah, they had that, but that was like peanuts compared to what was, you know, happening later on, right? Like if I was Kyle Hamilton too, I would have been like, man, I should have been born a couple years later, because he would have got so much more money in college. I mean, he's doing fine, but you know, but like that would have set up for all these guys different, and it changed. Then all of a sudden it became like this bidding war, and it just, it became it just took it to a different level. And Notre Dame didn't want to do that because Jack Swarbrick was like, well, it's going to get regulated, and it didn't get regulated right away, and it's still not totally regulated. So it's just slowing down a tiny bit now to get to the point next year. But now it's like there's still that big part of it. It's just a different time. So he kind of took over at like the wrong time for kids to just be choosing Notre Dame for just Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Like, and they, you know, and Christian talked about it when we did the show last week about how Jeremiah Love like chose Notre Dame when he was getting offered a lot more money at other places, and they just weren't even competitive with a lot of these guys. So it's like, how were they going to kind of win out on those things? And I think too, that because the first year didn't go great, you know, there was, you know, ups and downs, peaks and valleys in that year. They didn't have the kind of momentum to just say like, oh, well, you're going to choose us and don't worry about the NIL later. Like it was still a factor. Right. And there's still going to be the factor of like, can this guy get into school? Can this guy, Does this guy want to go to live in South Bend? He's from Georgia or whatever, and all this. There's all these other kind of parts of it that played into why they didn't just all of a sudden become a top 5 class. And I mean, here's another thing. He got stuck with Tommy Rees as his offensive coordinator. And you can't say he got stuck because that wouldn't have been his offensive coordinator.
He wouldn't have. He had to be the offensive coordinator to take the job. And
then essentially he got stuck with Chancey Stuckey because that was Rees' hire. So he went through a transition with new staff, and then he went through kind of like another second mini transition with that. So there's a lot of it, right? And Al Golden, they didn't play elite defense in year 1. So now they have 2 years of that. So there's all these other pieces that have kind of added up into it where they can recruit at, should recruit at a higher level now than they were before. And it's still going to be challenges. They're never going to get all the same guys that Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State can get. It's just never going to be there. But it's just about kind of like getting it to a certain point where, you are in that 5 to 10 range every year and getting kind of like when it comes down to, you have your list of like, these are like, that are like 6-7 elite guys that we want, and you're landing 4 of them or something.
Yeah. It's it just, those are the final steps, but I think they are kind of positioned to take those steps, and I think that's why. I mean, Marcus Freeman's Q rating has to be 100 with Notre Dame fans right now. I mean, I don't remember. I mean, there's a lot of agreement on Marcus Freeman in the Notre Dame fan base and in that community. That really helps. And then the thing is like, he's kind of not satisfied, right? Like that's not his nature. And the good thing about him always pushing his message is, it's going to be consistent, and he's not going to stop with that. And so it lends itself to, like we said, he always wants to continue to elevate and, elevate the program and move on. So I think we can end it there, Jamie. Thank you everyone for tuning in. If you like what you heard, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please hit the notification bell soon, whatever it is. We are going live. We'll be back on Thursday with more Notre Dame football talk. So it was a fun show. Liked bagging on USC a little bit and talking about Marcus Freeman. So have a good rest of your day, everyone. We'll talk to you on Thursday. Keep hitting and hustling.